We are in the man cave of Walt Coppell, old buddy of mine. You've probably seen us bow fishing in years past. Now, Walt, we've talked about all kinds of stuff outdoors related, but here recently we started talking about reloading. Now, I went to buy ammunition the other day for my 25-06, and I was like, oh,
it's hot.
That's really expensive. Let's first of all talk about who would be somebody who might want to reload. How much do you actually have to shoot to end up saving money and paying for the equipment that you have to put into this?
We're going to talk today about metallic cartridges, rifle, handgun, and also shotgun. I would say that most hunters tend to shoot more shotgun shells, especially if they dove hunt. Unfortunately, you know, all the hunters out there know that ammunition across the board went up 25% last year.
Lead has gone up.
And that's why they couldn't hold back anymore on the cost, because lead, brass, and copper, which is what makes everything up. The guy who shoots a lot, yeah, he can save. But if he gets into it, it's kind of like the guy who ties his own flies too. It's fun.
What's the basic equipment that you have to reload?
This is your main item. This is your press. This one here is called a C-press. Once you buy this press, you can load any type of centerfire rifle or handgun simply by buying a set of dies for your caliber. You have to have a scale. You can have electronic scale. Down here I've got a balance beam scale. It's essentially have a scale. You have to have a scale, because we're talking about grains. We're down to actual grains when you load. The other thing is a dispenser. You really have to have is the books. You've got to load by the manuals. You have to use a manual for safety. It's not rocket science, but you know, you're working with gunpowder.
Certain things you have to do to be safe. You don't
need
want
to be safe.
Yeah.
But the manuals are great. The manuals will go step by step. All of them have chapters on reloading, safety tips, and will even tell you how to adjust your dies and anything else you need.
Why don't you step us through and go ahead and load us? Show you loading and explain what you're doing as you go along.
Here we have a factory round, and of course after you shoot it, this is all you have left. And then there's one that's been reloaded. One thing that's important is, you know, this is what you've got left. You want to clean it. And I've got right here, this is a tumbler. There's two types. There's an actual tumbler, and then it had a vibration type. You have to let this tumble though. It's got brass cleaning media in it. You will have to let this tumble for 24, 36 hours. That's about what I do. I usually, it can tumble for a week if you want, but 2 days. If you let it tumble for 2 days, and I'll show you what it looked like. This has been tumbling for probably 48 hours. Put my 221 brass in there. I have quite a bit. I probably put about 100 rounds in there. And there's our media. There we have a nice clean piece of brass. There I can show you there's one that's been fired. It's important to have clean brass because you're going to resize this through a precise die, and you don't want any dirt or anything like that to get in the die. The first thing we'll do is we'll take, this is your resizing die, and it has a decapper to take that old primer out. And then you have, this is called the lube pad. You have to have a little bit of lube on this brass so it won't stick into the die. Put it in your shell holder, and you push it with the stroke all the way up, pops the primer out till it stops. Now it's put that piece of brass back to factory specification. And now you can see it's knocked the primer out. Then you've got this is a primer pocket cleaner, just a little like wire brush. Fits in there because you'll have a little black for when the primer went off. A couple twirls there, cleans it right up. So your next step now is to put a primer back in. You lay your primers in, it'll feed one at a time in here. It's got a shoe, just like the shoe on here. You lay your shell in, and with your thumb, you just push down, it pushes the primer in, and
Ta-da.
the primer's seated.
How about that?
So my next step now is to put my powder in. I'm using 4198. There's all kinds of different powders you can use. I always make it a habit that the powder I'm working with, I leave the can there during the whole time because you don't want to get the powders mixed up because there's so much difference. What might be a moderate charge in one type of powder would be off the charts if you had a different powder. So I have this measure just below 15 just to get me close enough so I don't have to hand trickle it all. I can actually start to put individual grains in here. 14.9, 15. Place the funnel over top. We put our powder in. We put it back into the shoe. Now we change dies. One thing to note, on your die sets, rifles use two-stage die sets. So we take the bullet, we've got our die in, we get it started, we put it on. I hold it and walk it up into the die. You push it all the way down. Doesn't take a lot of pressure till you hear that cam click over. Draw back. Shotguns are loaded by volume. You've got your shot in one tube. You set it with a bushing bar. I'm loading 20 gauge. It'll drop 7/8 of an ounce every time by volume. Same thing with the powder. You know, you're not trying to shoot a little bullet at 100 yards into a bullseye. You're putting the shotgun out there and you're putting the pattern out there. You do it with volume. It's once you're set up, if you buy the cheap shotgun shells, you know, they're cheap. You can't use them. You toss them. But if you use like a Remington or a AA, Winchester AA, that's what the reloader's like. The one with the high crimp number on it. Resize, knock the primer out. New primer in. Powder dump. Seat the wad. Drop the shot. Start the crimp. And roll the crimp.
Walter, interesting stuff, man. Thank you very much. Once again, you've probably done a bad thing.
Got you into another hobby.
Yeah.
I did it with bow fishing, so here's another one.
I've had it with you,
Yeah.
but it's going to be fun.